What's up, guys? Kara Corey here, registered dietitian, back for another dietitian talk for you guys. And today's topic is near and dear to my heart, and I feel like it's going to be very controversial. So I'm sure you guys will share your opinions below. Feel free to. I am going to talk a little bit today about Splenda. Obviously, you guys saw the thumbnail. You came to this video for a reason. I get asked to talk about this topic all the time. I actually have another video on artificial sweeteners you guys can view if you haven't already. But for this video, I am going to try my best to just present the information as it stands from a non-bias approach. So for some of you guys that follow me, you do know my opinion on Splenda or sucralose, but I am just going to do this video and kind of lay out the facts and let you guys make your own decisions as consumers, your thoughts and opinions. Reason why I'm doing this video is because I feel an obligation as a dietitian and as someone that puts up videos to help disprove myths and nutrition misconceptions that are out there. I felt like it was my responsibility to do this video. I noticed in the headlines this week, which I'm very proud of myself that I did, because I get very busy and sometimes I lose touch of some of the newest things that come out. But one of the big headlines, if you didn't realize, is Splenda this week. Splenda causes cancer. Links with Splenda and leukemia, Splenda and cancer, all over the place. So if you haven't seen that, Google it. You will find tons of stuff. So let's start by talking about the study that was done. And yes, it was one study that was conducted that has blown up all over the place. And that's all it takes. That's all it takes is one study being done and kind of becoming a super hot topic all over the place. So this article was published in the Journal for Occupational and Environmental Health. I do have some notes next to me just because I don't want to misspeak. I like to take notes when I do my research because I'm kind of a dork like that. But I want to make sure I give you guys the right information. And sometimes it's hard to remember everything when I ramble for 20 minutes. But anyways, this study was published back in January. It was done in Italy, I believe. But the study was done with Swiss mice. In case you happen to wonder what their background was, they were Swiss. And they fed these mice from 12 days in after gestation for their lifespan different doses of sucralose. And they did that in their background. They noted that thus far, research has not been able to prove or show any correlation of negative health implications with consuming sucralose, and actually any artificial sweeteners. But that was their basis for their background. Science has not yet been able to prove it. We're going to do this study. We're going to prove it. So they took like 300 female mice, 400 male mice, something around there, and took these mice and fed them different doses of sucralose. They listed it as parts per million, so I don't know the conversion, to be honest with you, but it was basically like 500, they fed them different amounts, 500, 2,000, I think it was 8,000 and 16,000 parts per million to these mice. And what they concluded was that they did see increases in leukemia in the male mice and increased instances of malignant tumors in the male mice. I did not get to read the full study, I will be honest with you, because I don't pay for the Journal of Occupation and Environmental Health. So I did the best I could to research the facts and the information from what I could find available. But based on what I found available, that was kind of it in a nutshell. That is kind of what came of this study and what the headlines were running with. What I'm going to say is Just think about this as a consumer. Looking at one study. I know people are going to hear this and they're going to see those headlines and go, I knew it! Splenda causes cancer! I told you so! That stuff is horrible! Blah, blah, blah. But regardless of your thoughts on Splenda, think about it from a scientific approach. I think anyone would back me up that one study does not necessarily prove an entire concept that we're then going to educate the world about. Most conclusions are not based on one study. The guidance given to us from the FDA and every other organization is usually not based on one study. So whether you agree or disagree with the information, as someone who's reviewing research, you got to do your research. You have to see how many people, you have to look at the design of a study first and foremost, and if it was a well-designed study. And I will admit, before I went into grad school, I remember watching Super Size Me. If you guys haven't seen that, it's kind of fun to watch. And Morgan Spurlock in that video eats fast food for 30 days, and at the end of it, he has high cholesterol, he has X, Y, and Z. And I remember my professor saying, okay, does this prove it? Does this prove that eating McDonald's causes all those things? And I was like, yeah, of course. Obviously, the proof is in that video. Sample size, though, 1 person. That's a poorly designed study, 1 person. But you would think it's just, yeah, of course. It's all right there, that 1 person. He shows it, he proves it. That's not a good basis for a study, though. So that's just one example. And then as I got into grad school and started learning research and how to find good research, peer-reviewed studies, and all that stuff, you have to understand how to find good studies. And to not base an opinion off one study, because no scientist should base an opinion off one study. So I just want to put that out there, that if you're someone that saw this and was like, oh my God, this is it, I knew it, and maybe you still feel that way and will regardless of this video, that's totally fine. But the design study itself had a lot of issues. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So one of the first things with the study is, with most studies, most scientific studies, you have a hypothesis, you have some type of question, and you test it. And in this study, it didn't really seem like they did that. They didn't really have a set hypothesis they were testing. It seemed very biased from the start, that they were set out to prove that sucralose caused cancer. So you can kind of see that from the information that's out there, that they didn't really set up a good structure for the design of the study, and they were just almost trying to prove what they wanted to prove. They kind of said it right in the study. There's nothing proving this yet, so we're going to prove it. With that being said too, some of the information I looked at was very interesting, that the actual institution that does these studies, it was called the Ramazine Institute. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. But the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has publicly stated that they actually will not rely on any studies coming out of that Ramazine Institute, because apparently most of the data coming out of there shows leukemia and lymphoma in all the animals and all the studies they do. It's always positive, always cancer. So you've got this U.S. agency saying, disregard them, disregard all their studies, which I found very interesting. So I don't know. Again, I'm just putting that out there for things to think about. Don't just look at that one study and take all that information. Do a little digging. Some of the other things that were interesting were, if you guys are aware, I've talked about this before, I believe, but the U.S. has set guidelines for what an acceptable daily intake of sucralose is. And that is actually 5 milligrams per kilogram of body weight for someone in the U.S. 5 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. So one would think that if a group of researchers wanted to test if it was harmful in humans. It would make sense to me that you would test an equal, kind of like an equivalent in your mice. You'd want to test what we're saying is currently acceptable with the mice, right? Like, doesn't that make sense? Instead, the levels that they tested were anywhere from 100 to 3,200 times more what is recognized as the acceptable daily intake for sucralose. So they basically fed these mice 3,000 times more than what we're currently saying is acceptable as humans to consume. So to me, that doesn't really, you're not comparing the right things there to actually prove what you're wanting to prove. The other thing too, when safety studies were done to actually come up with that ADI, the acceptable daily intake, they found no effects at 500 milligrams per kilogram of body weight in humans. So the feds actually took that number and decreased it 100-fold, 100-fold, that's just fun to say, to come up with an acceptable level for humans. Even though at 500 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, they didn't find any adverse effects. Just throwing that out there. There have been over 100 studies done on sucralose over the past 20 years to study the harm, if there's harm in humans, what the harm is with consuming it at different levels. And they're well-designed studies. And there has yet to be research to support that it causes cancer. And their study even reported that as well. So you really can't argue this. There has yet to be studies that show that. This study kind of says it with males, but again, not a great design study, and there's some other kind of shady shit going on there by the looks of it. The other thing I found interesting too is the results have no mention the females. What happened with these female mice? Did their rates of cancer decrease? Did they go on to live long lives and make gains? Like, what happened to these chicas? We don't know. I couldn't find that information. And I believe the study just, they reported back that there was nothing significant to report, which just, okay. It just doesn't seem like a well-designed study, like I already mentioned. There's some stuff going on there that they failed to educate us on. In a well-designed study, you will see the information on control groups and comparisons between your control groups and your groups that are actively being dosed with sucralose. And there was no mention of that in there either. Again, not well designed. So I wanted to do this video to just kind of put it out there because I feel like this study, a lot of people who don't understand research, not saying I'm an expert, but I do understand how to look at a study or look at the facts that were given by the study and question it. You should sit here and question me right now. I totally respect that. As an individual, you should question the things that you learn, that you hear, that you read. So I guess my point of this video isn't even necessarily advocating for Splenda. I personally don't give two shits if you eat Splenda or not. I really don't. As a practitioner, as a registered dietitian, I would encourage you to stay within the ADI that's currently recommended, and I would help educate you on what that looks like. But other than that, if you watch this video and you're like, I'm not having cancer, I'm sticking with whole foods, I think that's great. That's cool. That's totally fine. But what I'm saying is, more importantly, is don't see one headline or one study that's done and take it as gospel, because it's not. You have to do more research there and really take a look at things and find out the science behind it and if it was done accurately and well. So I think my take home for you is just that. You know, I leave it up to you guys to make your own decisions whether you want to use those types of products or not. I do feel like artificial sweeteners can be used for folks that do need to lose a little weight and cut calories. Is it good to have things more natural and whole? Things like honey, maple syrup? Sure, I think that's great. But for some people who are diabetics or need to watch the level of calories that are coming into their body, carbohydrates, sugar, these products can be used and can be helpful for people. So I leave it up to you to decide what you want to do. I hope you guys found this information helpful. I know a lot of people want to know about this topic, so I'd really appreciate if you share this video with others, post it on your other social media accounts. I'd love to hear other people's opinions. I'm not going to battle with anyone, so feel free to write your opinions below, and you're entitled to your opinions on this topic. So I hope you guys share this with others. Hope you enjoyed it. Comment below if you have other hot topics you'd like me to discuss. I'd be glad to, and keep checking back for more. So I thought I would do a separate video talking about caffeine addiction and how to kind of cycle off and get through it. So for starters, there's two different approaches you can take. One being you can go off cold turkey, or two, you can slowly wean yourself off. I kind of did a little bit of both.